All right, the $1 trillion infrastructure bill has officially passed the Senate after 19 Republicans, including Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, voted for it, along with all 50 Democrats. Here's a breakdown of what was passed today. It includes money for roads, bridges, broadband, installing technologies in vehicles to detect impaired driving. That means driving while drinking, Green New Deal provisions, and it will raise taxes for certain Americans. The bill, though, still needs to pass the House. Meanwhile, right now, Democrats are now taking up a budget resolution in the Senate that essentially green lights their ability to pass a separate $3.5 trillion spending plan that will be done without any Republican votes. And here's what's included in that bill, by the way: universal pre-K, extending child's tax credits, free community college, climate change initiatives, amnesty during a border crisis, new welfare without work requirements, and a tax cut for wealthy people that personally benefits elite liberal donors in blue states. Former President Trump has not been silent. He sounded off by saying nobody will ever understand why Mitch McConnell allowed this non-infrastructure bill to be passed. He has given up all of his leverage for the big whopper of a bill that will follow. I have quietly said for years that Mitch McConnell is the most overrated man in politics. Now I don't have to be quiet anymore. To weigh in on this, let's bring in Indiana Senator and Senate Budget Committee member Mike Braun. Senator, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
All right, you voted no, but I thought it was interesting. I kind of put the Republicans that voted yes in three buckets: ones that aren't going to be up for re-election, ones that are retiring, and then a lot of ones that are from Midwest and rural states that were going to, get a ton of money because of this. Why did you vote no?
I come from a Midwest and rural state, and along with defense, I think infrastructure is probably two things we ought to do right. Not in the context of all the things you mentioned before. 18 trillion in debt. When I got here 2.5 years ago, we're now 28 trillion. And all of this is going to be, borrowed mostly. They're starting to even talk about not doing some of the things they boldly were going to do in terms of raising taxes. That was all mostly for show anyway. A lot of their own senators wouldn't have gone for that. So I was upset with the process. It was easy for me when I vote on principle, even when I like stuff in bills, if it's on a broken process and it's repeating all the stuff we've done for decades to create these huge deficits, I'm going to be no, even when I like the content. Rural states, yes, they're going to like the broadband. They're going to need help on roads and bridges, but we're borrowing our way to get there, and that's what I don't like.
I agree. I'm with you on this.
Senator, the Congressional Budget Office already reported that this bill would increase our budget deficit by $256 billion. And Wharton said it would have zero impact on our economy. Beyond those two alarming reports, what other impacts is it going to have on our national debt?
Well, that's the next act, and they're talking about 3.5 trillion. So they were talking about raising taxes. They're already in this voting thing that we do here called a vote-a-rama, voting against some of the things they propose because they know that's not sellable. They'd lose some of their own. I mentioned that earlier. So we are going to end up, when this is all said and done, in my opinion, being close to 31 to 32 trillion in debt. And that's, like I say, most of it. A lot of it has occurred since I've been here in 2.5 years. We will take this country by borrowing from our kids and grandkids into a place we've never been before because we're consumers and spenders. We were savers and investors when we came out of World War II with about this much debt. We paid it off. Now this is a growth business. Democrats are political entrepreneurs. And what I didn't like, we were going along with them. President Trump was right. We're complicit on this hard infrastructure bill because they're not going to say we were in on the whole works because they're better at spinning stuff than we are. They're Madison Avenue experts, and we've got some of this stench on our own hands by voting for this first infrastructure bill.
First of all, I wish, my view is right now you should run for majority leader when we take this back because I feel like you get it. You brought that common sense business acumen to Washington. All these other guys, I feel like where are they? They should get the R pulled from their name. I don't get it. Where are the Republicans to stand up and say, yeah, I'm for infrastructure. That's why we have a gas tax to pay for it. But this idea, I mean, I feel like we're Democrat light right now in the Senate.
I agree. I call it the farm system of politics is where most come from. And many go to law school, don't even practice, get right into elected or appointed politics, and have not, in many cases, even run a lemonade stand. This wouldn't work on a school board I was on, in state government, let alone building an enterprise with competition and the rigor of it over 37 years. You know, you don't have to be a finance major like I was and have an economics degree. This is just basic common sense that we're giving the American public something over the last 2 decades. And this whole idea that all of a sudden we may get some type of epiphany to start holding the line. Well, we will on the 3.5 trillion, but it shouldn't take that. We should have been doing this decades ago, saying no.
Can I just ask you, brought that up. So you passed this $1 trillion thing today, or the other folks did, rather. It goes to the House. I just mentioned at the top of this that we're talking about now another $3.5 trillion on this other soft infrastructure, whatever the heck that is. But it's basically a Democratic wish list put on a nice fluffy title. Where does this thing stand? And what's the timeline and the process regarding that?
So it's going to go out the door this evening or tomorrow, 2 committees that'll have to put text and kind of button it up. And in late September, it'll go over to the House. And listen what else is going to happen. We're going to have to do our normal spending appropriations. I'm on that committee. They don't like me very much because I say no more than yes. But then the debt ceiling comes into play. And we better not be accommodating the Democrats to raise the debt ceiling. They need to shove that through their own reconciliation package. And then mostly we need to hold firm there and then start changing our ways to where we're not part of this unholy alliance where it's a quid pro quo. We give them what they want on domestic spending. They give us what we want on defense spending. We're another $1 trillion in debt normally. That's going to go up, by the way, to $1.5 trillion here in a few years with all this current spending being baseline. So it's not going to end well. And we need to start holding up for taxpayers and doing things like you do it on Main Street. You can never get by with this.